very welcome news. And also to focus on increasing financial resources for disaster risk reduction budgets. So in order to help in a practical way parliamentarians in the process, in this process we have created a practical toolkit that offers 10 specific actions to effectively shape and implement disaster risk reduction policy, legal, financial, and oversight frameworks. The toolkit calls for the integration of disaster risk reduction into development plans and initiatives that address climate change adaptation, by ensuring that it's also mainstreamed through both legislation and budgets. So as we move forward, it's crucial that we collectively strive to implement and advocate for climate and disaster resilient policies and strategies that contribute to sustainable development, disaster risk reduction, climate adaptation, and climate mitigation. So I'd like to invite parliamentarians to put nature, people, lives, and livelihoods at the heart of climate action to support policies that combat climate change, safeguard the environment, and create a sustainable and prosperous future for all people, including here, especially here in Africa. Thank you, Moderator. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much. Mr. Speaker, allow me now to bring the politicians on board. We have a number of delegations, and in the customary parliamentary tradition, I'll read out the delegations. If I read out your country, you could stand, and then we can acknowledge you. In the Kenyan Parliament, we do not clap, and we do not make other unnatural sounds. We stomp. We stomp on it. So stomp on it when we call out the delegation. We have a delegation from Zambia. Zambia. Thank you, Honorable. We have a delegation from Uganda, very strong delegation from Uganda. Very, very strong delegation from Uganda. You're welcome. We've got a delegation from Egypt. Egypt, you're welcome. You'll be taking the floor shortly. We've got a delegation from Mali. Mali has registered. I believe they're around. We've got a delegation from Sierra Leone. Sierra Leone, yes, and indeed the president of Sierra Leone has been with us since the summit started. We've got a delegation from Guinea. Guinea, you are welcome. You're welcome. And for information, if you need translation services, there are certain, there's an area that is reserved for French speakers with the necessary translation devices. We've got a delegation from Namibia. Namibia, you're welcome. We've got a delegation from Nigeria. Nigeria, you are welcome. We've got a delegation from Gambia. The Gambia, welcome. We've got a delegation from South Sudan. South Sudan, you're welcome. We've got a delegation from Ghana. Ghana, you're welcome. Dr. Mafo will be moderating some of the sessions. We've got a delegation from the East Africa Community, the EAC. You're welcome. And Sankok is back in this chamber. And Babu Owino is not here today. You're welcome from the EAC. We've got a delegation from the Africa Union and Pan-African Parliament. Members of the Pan-African Parliament, I saw Esther Passaris, and I think Esther has gone for another meeting. Last but not least, we've, Professor Margaret Kamar of Pan-African Parliament. Last but not least, a delegation from Kenya, both National Assembly and the Senate, please be upstanding. These are the hosts and the ones who have put together this wonderful dialogue. You are all welcome, and I know other members will be joining us in due course. Right Honorable Speaker, at this juncture, allow me to bring the chair of the Senate Departmental Committee that is concerned with matters climate change and environment, the Honorable Senator Methu. The floor is yours for 3 minutes.
Thank you very much, our moderator. Right Honorable Speaker, I'm used to Amason Kingi. The Right Honorable Speaker, Moses Masika Wetangula, please allow me to address when standing because it is not customary for parliamentarians from Kenya to speak when they are seated. and I'm very grateful that I got an opportunity to speak for you. You know, I have a lot to learn from you. I tell you that when I become an accomplished legislator, I'll become Moses Wetangula. My name is John Medhu. I am a senator from a county called Nyandarua. I am serving in the Senate, privileged to serve as the youngest senator. That is why I say that I have a lot to learn from Senator Speaker Moses Wetangula. I'll read something that myself and the team have put together. I'm deeply honored and privileged to stand before you today at this momentous event of the African Climate Summit Conference Parliamentarians Dialogue. On behalf of the Senate Standing Committee on Land, Environment and Natural Resources, I extend to each of you a warm and heartfelt welcome to the Parliament of Kenya. We have gathered here from across the continent and beyond, representing diverse backgrounds, profession, and expertise, all united by a common purpose to address one of the most pressing challenges of our time, global climate crisis. As we embark on this crucial journey over the next few days, I wish to express my gratitude to each and every one of you for your commitment to creating a sustainable and resilient future for Africa. The African Climate Summit Conference comes at a pivotal juncture in our shared history. The impacts of climate change are not just looming over the horizon. They are affecting us now with devastating consequences for our ecosystems, economies, and the welfare and well-being of our communities. It is urgent to call for action that we cannot afford to ignore. Our gathering here signifies our collective determination to address these challenges head-on. Over the course of this conference, we will engage in thoughtful discussions, share innovative solutions, and forge partnerships that will pave way for a more sustainable and climate-resilient Africa. The issues before us are complex, but we are equipped with the requisite expertise and determination to find solutions. I want to acknowledge the invaluable contributions of all the experts, policymakers, activists, scientists, and advocates who have devoted their time and energy to shaping the agenda of this conference. Your dedication and passion inspires us all. Mr. Speaker, sir, listening to the commitments that were made by the head of state and governments at the summit yesterday, Africa has a moment of exploiting and seizing the opportunity for an African-led solution on climate change. As parliamentarians, therefore, we must stand up for our people. We must stand up for our continent. Resources must follow the intent shown by the heads of state and governments, and this would need the collective effort of all of us seated here today. The chair of the session mentioned that we need to do the laws that will follow the intent that was shown by in the summit. Policies must align to the declarations that are made in this particular summit, and we are able to deal with the policies. I would like to challenge you, my fellow parliamentarians, to pursue the route of bringing up to date your respective climate change acts in your countries, so as to assist in dealing with the current challenges that we are facing and dealing with the climate change and its mitigation. The committee that I chair in the Senate, which is fully mandated to consider all legislation and bills touching on climate change, very recently was able to process and bring up to date a bill forwarded by my counterpart in the National Assembly, namely the Climate Change Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 42 of 2023. And the members of my committee, most of them are in this particular gathering. Honorable Speaker, you appreciate that the members of the Senate the members of that particular committee had less than 5 days to conclude their business, and they put their foot forward. I'm very proud of the members of the Standing Committee on Land, Environment and Natural Resources of the Senate that I chair. The bill which I urge you to emulate and made amendments to the existing Climate Change Act to ensure that we regulate carbon markets, align with international commitments, engage a broader range of stakeholders, and support Kenya's emission reduction goals. We are available for support to ensure that we are on the same page as a continent for Africa, and I'm happy that we are engaging with chairs of other parliaments who are here. I've had a conversation with the delegation from South Sudan on what we can be able to do so that we share experiences. In the spirit of inclusivity, let us remember that the effects of climate change know no borders and affect all people, regardless of their background or circumstances. We must prioritize equity and justice in our discussions and actions, ensuring that the most vulnerable amongst us are not left behind by ensuring effective public participation. Ladies and gentlemen, as we embark on this journey together, let us remember the road ahead may be challenging, but it's not insurmountable. Our collective efforts can and will make a difference. Let this conference be a turning point in our fight against climate change, and let us emerge from it with renewed hope and a clear roadmap for a sustainable and prosperous future for Africa. I thank you all very much.
Thank you, Senator Methu. Kenya is, as a bicameral parliamentary system, the chair of the Standing Committee on Matters, Climate Change and Environment in the National Assembly, in whose chambers we are today, is a Honorable David Gikaria. We call him Gix. He's a prolific footballer. Gikaria, the floor is yours for 3 minutes.
Thank you, moderator. Sorry. Honorable Speaker, moderator, my colleagues, members of parliament, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Gikaria David. I represent a constituency called Nakuru Town East in Nakuru County, and I'm privileged to be chairing the committee that is known as Environment, Climate Change, Forestry and Mining in the National Assembly. Honorable Speaker, allow me just to recognize a few members of my committee who are here. Please, let's stand. Members of the, thank you very much. We have Fatuma Masito, County Women Rep, Kwale, Gertrude Mbeyu, Women Rep, Kilifi, and of course, Mheshimiwa Joseph Emathe from Turkana Central. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Climate change is no longer a reserve of the academia, and it is now self-evident in rising sea levels and predictable weather patterns, higher temperatures, wildfires, deserts, encroachment, water scarcity, food insecurity, and the list goes on and on. It can't be ignored or wished away. It calls for a corroborated action. The scientists have predicted and the indicators have shown that accelerated warming in the planet is now estimated at 1.5 degrees by 2030. In addition, most nations, that is the nationally determined contributions, are not sufficient to safeguard the 1.5 degrees goal. This makes challenge even worse. And Honorable Speaker, you remember since independence in this country, we have had the worst drought that affected this country in so many different ways, where so many people lost their economic earnings. Cognizant of the imminent impact and the effect of climate change, as parliamentarians, we have come together to ensure that the desired results for keeping the global temperatures at manageable levels are met. Honorable Speaker, if you look at what we have done in this country, the budgets that we recently passed and are now being implemented, is that His Excellency the President did actually allude to the fact that he wants to take matters of climate change seriously, and he actually doubled, almost tripled, the budget allocation to the respective ministries that endeavor to undertake environment and climate change effect. And we actually passed that just to showcase how important the President has taken this aspect seriously. We have come out clearly as legislators and departmental committee, whose role is to midwife legislative disclosure on matters of climate action, to reach out to the relevant ministries, experts, academia, shareholders, and our robust technical team of Secretariat. Honorable Speaker, we have a very good Secretariat that you have given to our committee, full of researchers, experts, legal experts on matters of environment, who do assist the committee to reach out on very informed decisions. This is because of the desire to have evidence-backed decision-making as the role of science, data, and information in this fight can't be gainsaid. Honorable Speaker, as a committee, and the President has come out very clearly saying that this aspect of the way he will be working is no longer guesswork. It is determined, it is predictable through science, data, and information. As we think globally, I urge all of us to act local and include the excluded from the onset and through the processes. Honorable Speaker, most of the decisions that are done in big hotels, in big conferences, are only implemented at the grassroots. So it's important for us to consider the awareness at the grassroots level. And my committee, through the budgetary provisions that we gave, did add almost 100 million for the ministry to be able to go out there to the public and make aware of the laws that we have and the effect of climate change and their action so that we can be able to improve on this. At the peak of this climate issue is our president, who is the chair of the Climate Change Council of this country. And Honorable Speaker, you remember we did, the president appointed the council members and they were approved in Parliament. Unfortunately, because of a lot of litigation, the council has not started working. And this is a very key council that will address and take charge most about these climate change issues. Today, as we speak, the African continent, as legislators, will look on our mandate and roles of legislation, oversight, representation, and the budget-making process. Let us fit our purpose to the roles of the people in the climate action agenda. By so doing, ensure it's very successful. As I conclude, Honorable Speaker, we must keep reminding each other that with the courage to begin and the discipline to stay the course, victory becomes a matter of time. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Gikaria. As you said, we act local and include the excluded. The Malawi delegation is present. I had excluded them, and I want to include the excluded. Malawi, feel welcome. I think it's also noteworthy to recognize the United Nations Environment Program, UNEP. They are here. Please be upstanding, UNEP delegation. UNEP delegation. The UNEP is resident in Kenya, and you should be part of our activities here at the National Parliament. Conrad Adenua Stifter. Conrad Adenua. Anja Beretta is leading a strong delegation, and Anja will be moderating some of the sessions. Allow me, honorable members, to bring Jacqueline Amongin, member of the East Africa Legislative Assembly and the chair of the Africa Parliamentarian Network on Climate Action. Jackie, the floor is yours for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Right Honorable Speaker, and thank you, Senator Moses Kajwang. I've already been introduced, but allow me to take this opportunity as the chair of the African Parliamentarians Network on Climate Action to introduce some of the executive members who are amidst us. I think I see Honorable Mutinta from Zambia, Honorable Agnes from Namibia, Honorable our Secretary General, Dr. Emmanuel Mafo from Ghana, and Senator Kajwang from Kenya. I would also like to make a recognition of the members of the East African Parliament who are around, just be upstanding for recognition. And definitely representing Uganda. Uganda is already recognized. So allow me go directly into my simple statement. I would like to be humbled to be standing in the legislature of Kenya Parliament. This is a parliament that has made history in Africa, because today we are talking about the role of parliament in championing climate action And out of all the 54 countries that we have in Africa, it's Kenya that came up with the first act of parliament on climate change in 2016. Therefore, Kenya, Right Honorable Speaker, stands as a pace setter for the rest of the African countries, but also globally. The Africa Climate Summit stands as a testament to our collective resolve as a continent to take proactive measures in the face of ever-accelerating climate emergency. This Parliamentarians dialogue serves as a platform for all stakeholders from across our diverse nations to come together, to share insights and to forge our pathways towards ensuring sustainable and resilient future we all aspire to. Our presence in Nairobi is not just a meeting of minds, it is a meeting of ideas, a catalyst for action, and a forum where innovative solutions can take root. It represents our determination to act decisively, to harness our legislative powers, and to collaborate across borders and all spheres for the betterment of our planet and our people. Throughout the course of our dialogue here, we will delve into critical issues ranging from leveraging our renewable energy potential to climate adaptation, mitigation, strategies to sustainable development, green economies, and protection of our precious ecosystem, including restoration of our degraded land. As you are aware, 132 million% of our African land, cropland, is already degraded. Therefore, as legislators in the continent, we have an uphill task as champions on areas in regards to climate change to explore how we can play a pivotal role in driving climate action at the national, regional, and international level. Aware that this is not just the first meeting that we've had in Nairobi, we've had a series of meetings, and we've come up with statements that at the end of this meeting will be a release for our parliamentarians' engagement in Nairobi. Aware that in the rest of Africa, only 4 countries so far, including Kenya, Uganda, Ethiopia, and Nigeria, have come up with climate-related policies, and those that have been actually taken up as assented to by the different governments as acts of parliament. We cannot continue this championing without putting our legislative role, oversight, at the forefront. I therefore call upon the rest of the countries to follow suit and ensure that even as we are going to a just transition, we are able to address the legislative gaps in our countries in order to allocate, to appropriate, and to legislate for all climate-related issues. As parliamentarians, the Pan-African Parliament has already, a parliament that I served representing Uganda for 10 years, is already working up on a model law, which I think can be replicable in the different countries. But as I stand here as the chair of the committee of my regional parliament of climate change, we are also tabling a bill in the regional parliament to make sure that at the end of the day, an act on East African climate change becomes history. As parliamentarians, we bear a profound responsibility to represent the interests of our constituents and to act as stewards of the environment for future generations. The climate crisis, in all its complexity and urgency, demands that we look beyond our current horizons and confront the long-term consequences of our actions or inactions for future generations. Our children, Right Honorable Speaker and honorable members, will bear the brunt of the decisions we make today. And I want to quote Frank Fanon. He once said that every generation must, out of relative obscurity, discover its historical mission and either betray it or fulfill it. And we have the mandate. It's now our time in this climate challenge to either fulfill our mission as legislators in the continent or betray it. Thank you, Right Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Amongin. Our next speaker is the Deputy Chair of the Foreign Affairs Committee in the Egyptian Parliament, and she is a former president of the IPU Forum of Young Parliamentarians. Honorable Sahar Al-Bazar, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Honorable Speaker, fellow parliamentarians, I stand here before you as young parliamentarian, representing the hopes, dreams, and urgent concerns of our generation. As we gather here for the parliamentarian dialogue during the Africa Climate Summit, we do so with a sense of responsibility, not only for our nations, but for also the very planet that sustains us. Our generation is aware of the pressing challenges posed by the climate change. We have grown witnessing its devastating impacts on our communities, economies, and ecosystems, from extreme weather events to food insecurity, from rising sea levels to displacements of citizens. The climate crisis is not a distant threat, but it's a stark reality that affects us all. Yet, we refuse to be passive victims to this crisis. We demand actions, and I am here to articulate our needs and expectations from international community for a just climate financing, as nations with heavy debts will face slow green transition. Therefore, I would like to draw your attention and officially launch the Ubuntu Initiative for Climate Financing. This initiative has been started by 4 young parliamentarians from lower middle income countries, Ghana, Senegal, Egypt, and Indonesia. We chose the name Ubuntu, which is a South African phrase, which means I am because you are, which signifies the importance of working together as humans in facing climate change risks. The initiative has been supported by more than 45 countries from the Global South and Ukraine as a lower middle income country. We are addressing the IMF and the World Bank with 3 key requests. The first one is more debt swaps for climate with special focus on adaptation. The second one is immediate suspension of IMF surcharges, which is an additional charges on top of basic interest rates, creating unfair burden on countries. The third thing is creating a common framework for lower middle income countries similar to the G20 framework for lower income countries. In conclusion, dear delegates, our message is clear. We refuse to inherit a world scarred by inaction of climate change. We demand commitment, just financing, inclusivity, and collaboration. I invite you all to join, support, and endorse the Ubuntu Initiative. Together, we can amplify our collective voices to drive great change. Finally, I extend my heartfelt gratitude to the Kenyan Parliament for hosting the parliamentary dialogue and fostering a global spirit of cooperation to tackle this joint and shared challenge. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And indeed, we also extend our appreciation for being gracious hosts of the COP27 in Sharm el-Sheikh last year, which was the African COP. Just before I invite the speaker to make the keynote remarks, Secretariat, is it possible for us to listen to Nakeat Dramani Sam, who is the CVF Youth Ambassador, who will talk to us on the impact and importance of the CVF, or the Climate Vulnerable Forum for Future Generations. Is the video ready? If it's ready, we will take it for 2 minutes, and thereafter we will be inviting the Right Honourable Speaker to make his address. If the video is not ready, then we can play it just before the next plenary session. And therefore, honorable ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to invite the Right Honorable Speaker of the National Assembly with a lot of humility, knowing that the last time I was in this chamber I was thrown out, and so today, Mr. Speaker, I come in peace. And the floor is yours, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, Moses Kajwang, my distinguished Senate brother. Honorable members of various parliaments, starting with our own National Assembly and Senate, and all other parliaments that have been acknowledged in introduction by the Honorable Kajwang. Allow me to welcome you to the House of Parliament, to the Republic of Kenya, for this very important climate change summit, the first in Africa, to convene in Africa to talk about Africa for the Africans. As students of history, you know, in 1896, a group of Europeans congregated in Berlin, Germany, and called themselves the Berlin Conference, sometimes called the Congo Conference. These Europeans decided to share Africa. They called it the scramble for and partition of Africa. They shared Africa into many, many, many small countries and ended up giving the Congo as a gift, a personal possession of the King of Belgium. And there started the destruction of our continent. They embarked on violently uprooting communities in Africa, violently drawing boundaries, cutting off communities from one country to another. I saw my Ugandan friends here from where I come from. I'm a frontier citizen, and the majority of my relatives are in Uganda. Then they built railways running from inland to the coast everywhere. There's no railway in Africa that was built running from one landlocked country to another. It was all from inland to the coast, inland to the coast. And they embarked on looting our wealth. The entire Western world was built on African sweat, on African wealth, starting with slave trade, slavery, colonialism, imperialism, and currently unequal terms of trade, where we give them our raw materials and take back finished products at sometimes 10, 20 times their original cost. I'm giving you this background to understand why Africa is where we are. We pollute least, we suffer most. And those who pollute sometimes have treated Africa with extreme dishonor. Those of you who are in Paris, and I was, after the Paris summit and the Paris agreement, the greatest polluter on earth, America, their president called the Paris Agreement a mischievous fraud. If you remember, President Trump, who embarked on reversing literally everything that Obama had done, called the Paris Agreement a mischievous fraud and threw it through the window. So as African legislators, representatives of the people of this great continent, Even as we congregate to talk, sometimes you find when you withdraw to think deeper that we are alone and on our own. We get tokens not commensurate with what has been taken from us, not commensurate with what we deserve, not commensurate with equity, not commensurate with human dignity. So as you sit here as representatives of the people of this continent, having sat yesterday listening to our presidents from across the continent, speaking candidly, emotionally, and openly about our plight as Africa, I want to encourage us that we strive to move ourselves from a continent of despair to a continent of hope. Because the future is with us. The future is right here in Africa. There are 3 lungs of the world in terms of climate: the Congo, the Amazon, and the Borneo in Indonesia. But the Congo is the biggest, the richest ecosystem, and if we protect it, its catalytic effect on many other parts of Africa will be felt. Africa is a continent that has been for many years been an object of pity by those who put us where we are, and an object of hopelessness. But nobody will spring us from that despair and hopelessness except ourselves. You are told yesterday that all the commitments from the developed world about adaptation funds, mitigation funds, and all these climate change issues have never been met to the full, sometimes not even 50%. So we must be innovative as Africans. We must think differently as Africans. If you go to your villages, there are stories that you'll be told by villagers who have never gone to anybody's school, but when you listen to them, the conclusion is there is climate change. You'll be told there used to be a big river here, and all you see is a dry gully. You'll be told there was a forest over there, and when you look there, there's no forest.
Honorables and esteemed guests, my name is Nakia Dramani Sound. I'm 11.
We can listen to him.
Maybe it can come later.
Honorables and esteemed
Please,
guests,
Secretariat,
my
let
name
it come
is
later.
Nakia Dramani Sound.
Yeah, let it come later. Sorry, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Thank you. So you'll be told there was a forest there, and when you look, you see no forest. You'll be told we used to do things this way. For those of you who have lived as long as I have, in the 90s, in the 80s, in this country, in the western part of Kenya, for those of you who come from the west, because our ecosystems are a bit different. By the last week of February, you planted your maize whether there was rain or not, because you knew by the first week of March there is rain. And the rains will find your seeds in the soil, they'll germinate, they'll grow, you'll harvest. Today, the rains don't arrive sometimes up to end of March, sometimes into April, sometimes not at all. Like we just went through the cycle of our worst droughts in 40 years as a country. And these changes, we are told, sometimes are because of human activities, We have also been told by those who believe differently that it's because it's the wrath of God and many other things. But we know the altruism is that the climate has changed and changed for the worse. And the genesis of this is human activities. We live as if there's no tomorrow. We pollute with total abundance. If you drive on the streets of Nairobi sometimes, as you drive, you see objects just flying out of people's cars. Packets of biscuits, paper bags of junk food, they just eat and throw them. And in the process, we are destroying our continent. But you are all, as legislators, you hold the pulse of your countries. The power of the pulse lies in Parliament. Whatever it is that we want to do, you must stamp on the appropriations of our resources. So I want to encourage you as parliamentarians to ensure that in your respective jurisdictions, you are appropriating enough resources for adaptation and mitigation programs on climate change. And it's been shown in parts of our country here, where rivers had run dry, you plant appropriate trees, within 2-3 years you have permanent streams running. So it can be done. Let's have our priorities right. Yesterday you heard our president telling the congregation that we have had to distort our budget because the number of children we must feed in school has grown from 1.5 million to 4 million. When you divert that money, something else suffers. You were told yesterday in the summit there by none other than Antonio Guterres, the Secretary General of the UN, that the world is so inequitable that we have multilateral financial institutions running the world, lording over the world, with colonial archaic structures, where, as our president said, an African country borrowing from the World Bank, IMF, or all those institutions, you pay 10, 20 times higher than a poor European country. We want equity. And we want those who put Africa where we are to pay for it. Because human history must respect reparations for wrongdoing. Those who stole our gold, those who stole our timber, those who stole our everything must be brought to the table to talk about reparations. Because we are not suffering because of our wrongdoing. We are suffering because we are collateral damage to misconduct of others. And that is what, as legislators, you must not shy away from talking. Fidel Castro once told the Americans, we have your debts, yes, we owe you money, but we can't pay, won't pay, until there is justice, fairness, and equity. We probably will not be that extreme, because we are governed by international instruments of borrowing and lending and all this. Then you have the Paris Club that will call you to humiliate you and call you are a failing state. Then you have all manner of descriptions, highly indebted poor countries, emerging countries. Today you are emerging, tomorrow you are highly indebted and poor. You know, they sit in Washington and decide what tag to put on you as an African country. And the tag they put on you determines whether you access credit or not. So Africans must come together. Africans must speak one language, one voice to protect our continent from the ravages of climate change, but above all, from those who cause this climate change from other places that you suffer most. We had a sad story in this country, honorable members, in the last drought and food shortage, of a woman in Mombasa who had absolutely no food, and her children were there staring at her as a mother. And the children must eat something. So she put a pan on fire, put water, and put stones and started boiling those stones with the hope that these children will sit hoping that the mother is cooking something for them to eat until they get tired and sleep for her to wake up the next day. That is our mother Africa. And I want to assure you, members of parliament, there are no angels out there that are coming to solve the problems of Africa. It is ourselves. And we must learn from each other. Kenya has passed a very progressive climate change bill that has been ascended to. The President of the European Union made reference to it yesterday. I want to encourage those of you, honorable members from other jurisdictions, we'll give you free copies to go with and see whether there are any things you can pick from there as a good precedent. If you improve on it, we'll also borrow back from you to improve ours even better, so that Africa can be in charge of its destiny. We used to be an agenda on tables of discussion. Eventually we crept to the tables of discussion. Now we are setting the agenda on the tables of discussion. And we must never look back. So, Senator Kajwang, as you discuss to come up with a parliamentary declaration from Nairobi, I want to encourage us that as members of parliament, you hold very unique positions in our countries. Forget about our petty party differences. At the end of the day, when there's a flood hitting Malawi, it doesn't hit the opposition, it doesn't hit the government, it hits the people of Malawi. At the end of the day, when there is a ravaging drought, it hits all of us. On matters of climate change, I want to urge us to be fiercely and viciously patriotic to our countries, to our mother continent, so that if Kenya can help Somalia, we will. If Uganda can help Kenya, it should. If Malawi can help Zimbabwe, let it be, so that we be each brother's keeper. I want to finish by assuring you once more that Africa is not poor. Africa is a very rich continent with very poor people. If we take charge of our continent, our resources, statistics will show you that Africa has a share of only 5 to 6% of international trade. But the commodities for trade are from where? From Africa. Africa, like you are told, pollutes least, we suffer the most. The ball is in our court as legislators. Let's rise to the occasion. Let's join our heads of state and work together for our continent. For our friends from Europe, these are the hard facts that are available in history. They're not mine. Let's work together and alter the wrongs of history. You know, for Kenya and Tanzania, you know, when they were doing that madness in Berlin in 1918, Mount Kilimanjaro used to be in Kenya. Until Queen Victoria gave it to Prince Ferdinand as a birthday gift. See how they have played with our resources? But in Africa, we agreed our boundaries at independence are our boundaries. We shall never raise those issues, but they're part of our history. God bless you, honorable members. Discuss our continent, and let's build our continent, because nobody else will build it except ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If there was need for a standing ovation, this was it. The Right Honourable Speaker, thank you so much for setting the tone. And the Speaker has made it clear that we are not here to sugarcoat or to pussyfoot. We are here to be bold and even revolutionary. Because if we fail to, then this climate crisis will be noisy and messy. And there'll be casualties. I think that brings us now to a good stage to allow members of parliament to have a conversation. At this point in time...
Chair, you can allow me to retreat to my chamber and do some work?
Mr. Speaker, we'll allow you, but we will call you later on when the Honorable Charity Chepkwony Kathambi will be reading the resolutions.
Yes.
And I know we are discussed, and thank you for accepting.
And I'm hosting you for lunch, all of you, at the parliamentary cafeteria.
As well as a cocktail for those with the appetite, later after the meeting. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. At this point, if the video from our youth ambassador from CVF is ready, we could take it at this point so that we can listen to Ms. Nakayet Dramani Sam. Secretariat, please assure me that it's coming up, otherwise we proceed to the next agenda. It's coming up? Okay, just we can be patient for a second. If it's a recorded video, we can then take it at a later time. Okay, just to make more efficient use of time, we will now go to our first plenary. We will now go to our first plenary before we take our break. Okay, I'm told the video will come after. We will do our first plenary of the day so that we can have more voices and more faces in this conversation. Our next session will be on renewable energy, and it will be moderated by Dr. Joachim, Senior Policy Advisor in Broadford de Welt. I'm just reading it in Anglo-Saxon fashion. And I think Dr. Joachim will explain to us what the organization does. Is Dr. Joachim here with us?
Yes.
Dr. Joachim, so I want to request you to come and sit here where I'm sitting to moderate the next session where the panelists, so the panelists who will join Dr. Joachim are Gubas Gonul, Director, Country Engagement and Partnership at IRENA. He's already taken his position. The next panelist is Babel Horn. He's already in position. Honorable Samuel Onugbo, former MP Nigeria. The Honorable, if you don't mind, you can cross over to the government side. That's the government side under normal circumstances. The Honorable Lawrence Songa. Lawrence Songa. The Honorable Jacqueline Amongin is already in position. Honorable Saha Albazar is already in position. The Honorable Senator Wahome Wamatinga, Chair of the Energy Committee in the Kenyan Senate. So I hand over to Dr. Joachim to moderate the next session.
Thank you, Honorable Kajwang, for graciously opening this session and inviting me to moderate the next session. I'm really honored to be here and to be the moderator. Cannot really believe I'm even sitting here now in this very special place in the House. I was asked to explain what we do where I come from. I am based in Berlin, Germany, and work for a German development organization, Brot für die Welt. We are a faith-based organization and the largest development organization in Germany and even in Europe. We work with partner organizations from civil society and churches in over 80 countries globally. And me, personally, I'm heading the energy work of Brot für die Welt and work on energy issues with civil society for a very long time. So I'm very pleased to be here and to be part of this conversation because, as my colleague Mitika from PACJA already said, I think when civil society and parliamentarians work together, really special, innovative and new pieces of legislation and partnerships can come into being. And it's really a great pleasure also to be part of this African Climate Summit, and I really see a lot of dynamics coming regarding renewable energy, and it's a great pleasure to see how Africa is standing up to drive a new agenda. Without further ado, I would like to take the opportunity to welcome our distinguished panelists who will all share insights now on the importance of renewable energy, but also the challenges of it and potentials for scaling up renewable energy deployment in Africa on the local and regional level especially. And we are particularly keen now in this session to understand what challenges and opportunities they see. Also from a global perspective, what a tripling target, which is being discussed now, would mean for their respective countries, and what kind of partnerships, collaborations, and shared learning could be useful in implementing this. So our first speaker, who will give opening remarks to this session and an international view and an update to the status of global renewables, is Gurbuz Gonul, the Director of Country Engagement and Partnership of IRENA. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Moderator. Excellencies, distinguished member of the Parliament, guests. It's really a great pleasure for me to addressing you today and to give you IRENA's perspective of energy transition, but also some insights into African energy transition and some of the initiatives and platforms that we have created to work together to help the countries in Africa to achieve their ambitions for energy transition. Ladies and gentlemen, an energy system centered on renewable energy can help resolve many of the Africa's social, economic, health, and environmental challenges. A profound energy transition is not only feasible, but also essential for climate-safe future, in which sustainable development prerogatives are met through renewables-based energy transition. And renewables are key to overcoming energy poverty, providing needed energy services without damaging human health or ecosystems, and enabling and transformation of economies in support of development and industrialization. Today, renewables are mainstream and growing year on year. And despite global uncertainties that we have been going through globally, renewables continue to be the cheapest source of power that we can get. Last year, renewable power additions grew by an incredible 81% of the overall net power capacity expansions globally. We estimate renewables created $55 billion in savings from global generation costs in 2022, last year. 700,000 jobs were added, bringing the global total to almost 13.6 million. And when we look at Africa, the rollout of energy, renewable energy in the continent has not been at the desired pace to meet the needs of African countries. IRENA estimates that Africa needs around $70 billion annual investment up to 2030 for clean energy transformation and to keep up with the economic growth. Although Africa has 17% of the world population, it has only received 2% of the worldwide investment in renewable energy in the last 2 decades. And there are several reasons for that: the perceived or real risks for investment, regulatory environment, the capacity, skills available to support energy transition, or access to affordable financing to have this transition happen. And IRENA is working with several initiatives to support that energy transition. We had President Ruto 2 days ago launched a new initiative called Accelerated Partnership for Renewables in Africa. And energy transition has never been only for deploying renewables. It has also a much larger ripple effect for creating jobs, for stimulating economic growth, for creating resilient communities, and also to fueling green industrialization. Many of the speakers highlighted the importance of creating that value addition in the countries with the energy transition. And this initiative is very much focusing on those dimensions. And we are starting with the first cohort of 6 countries with high ambition for renewables, including Kenya, with this initiative, supported by Denmark, Germany, and United Arab Emirates, and several partners we work with. Also, another initiative we are starting at COP28. This is more about lives and livelihoods and how we can put people and communities in the center of energy transition, and how we can integrate those renewable energy solutions into health and agri-food value chains, creating value, stimulating economic activity, and help alleviating poverty. We have been closely working with the parliamentarians under the IRENA context. We have created platforms like Legislators Forum, Legislators Dialogue, having meetings, gatherings to hear from you, from the insights, and how we can promote renewables, because we consider parliaments and parliamentarians in the center of energy transition. They have a key role, and how we can create those structures to have a dialogue among parliamentarians, to share good practices, but also hear from you on the best way of taking forward energy transition discussions at the parliamentary context. And we are very much looking forward to deepening this dialogue.
Okay. Just to explain the system here, I'm sorry you were cut off now. We just implemented a timekeeping instrument here, which is this flashlight that I was just explaining how it works. It is green for the first 3 minutes that you are talking, right? And then after 3 minutes, it turns yellow. And like 20 seconds before the 5 minutes that you have are up, it will turn red. Just for you to see, but I didn't explain that beforehand, so we'll give you a bit of time to finish your presentation. Sorry for cutting you off.
No problem. I was almost at the end of my intervention. I was just saying that we are very much looking forward to deepening cooperation with the parliaments and parliamentarians, because they are extremely important player in our discussions, and how we can promote and advance energy transition discussions in the parliament, and creating the right enabling frameworks and right initiatives is extremely important, and we value that cooperation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gonu, for your input. We heard very well how important the role of renewable energy is for development. even, and for poverty eradication, energy access, and that renewable energies are becoming mainstream globally, but yet for Africa, more pace in the deployment of renewables needs to be developed, and people need to be put in the center of the transition. And I know that Honorable Bärbel Höhn puts that very often in the focus of her speeches, to put people in the center of the transition. So that leads me to her, and I welcome her to give her input now. The floor is yours for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Joachim. Before I start with maybe my experience from Africa, I would like to tell you some data from Germany and the conclusion of that. So 2 years ago, we had a new federal government in Germany, and this government was very engaged with renewables. So they eliminated blockades and obstacles and bureaucracy, and we can now see the result because renewables are expanding. For example, in 2022, nearly 10 gigawatt were installed with the renewables in the last year in Germany. 10 gigawatt in 2022, and that's really a huge number. New installed renewable energies, most of them photovoltaic. And the first 8 months of this year till the end of August, 9.5 gigawatt were installed, photovoltaic, wind turbines, renewables. That means in this year we will have more than 10 gigawatt installed in Germany in 1 year of renewables. And that means that we had in the first 8 months of this year, 59% of our electricity mix is coming from renewables. And that's a big number because we produced about 300 terawatt hours in Germany in this 8 months. And that's a tremendous number. So what I would like to say, we are doing not enough. We must be more ambitious in Germany, but we are on track. And what I would like to say is that in some sectors we are doing nothing, and especially in the transport sector. I think it's very important if the minister of this sector is really interested and engaged, or if not, or if he is very close to the fossil industry and fossil vehicles. And we can see that in the transport sector. So that means, as conclusion, most important is the political will. The political will is most important, not only in Germany, but in all countries I visited. And when I worked here in Africa as special representative for energy in Africa, I visited 15 countries. And I think there are 3 very important points, and I would like to debate with you. What do you think about that? Are the really very important points? To my view, they are very important points. The first one is training. We need to train the people. We have the same problem in Germany. We have the same problem in every country. But we need vocational training, not only academic, but vocational training, praxis training, experts that can install photovoltaic, experts that are really going to the ground, going to the households and are installing photovoltaic or wind turbines. We have in Germany something like the dual system, practical training and then in companies and added theoretical training in schools. And that was a good idea in Germany, but as I said, we need young people who are interested and work in the sector, and that means for the society that we must recognize that these professions are very important for the state, for the inhabitants. It's not only the academic professions, but also the very practical ones. Second, to me it's very important, when we are talking about renewables and decentralized renewables, we have to go to the ground. And the ground, there are the people, there are small and medium-sized companies, there are municipalities, there are cooperatives, and we have to work with them together, because one of the main points is good maintenance. When we are installing decentralized systems, it's not only the installation, but also the good maintenance and the sustainable operating system. And that's why we need the local entrepreneurs, that's why we need the local level, and that's why we need a bit knowledge, because we need also good quality of the hardware.
I'm sorry, the time is up, but of course, I'm happy to give you another minute to finish your talk.
Maybe. Oh, okay, I was the first one. I have to learn about that. So only the last sentence, we have to look for financial systems that included all these ideas, especially of maintenance, because otherwise we will fail. And we can talk about these financial systems in the debate. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Bärbel Höhn. And since I also come from Germany, I can copy every point you made. I experienced as well in the photovoltaics industry how important it is now to train people to go to the ground and have different financial systems working. Thank you very much. Now we come further to honorable members of parliament from the African continent, and it's my pleasure and honor to invite Honorable Biyika Lawrence Songa. He is a member of parliament from Uganda and chair of the Climate Change Committee. The floor is yours, if you like.
Thank you very much, moderator. My name is Biyika Lawrence Songa, the chair of the Climate Change Committee in Uganda. And I'm happy that we have a big delegation here led by my deputy, Honorable Jacinta Atuto. They may stand. A big delegation from Uganda. Thank you. The three areas of my conversation, one is the focus of renewable energy and insight from my experience in Uganda, the opportunities and barriers or challenges to renewable energy in Uganda, and what and how regional and international support required for addressing renewable energy in Uganda, and also the meaning of renewable energy to me in Uganda. I want to start by saying that the increasing awareness of the dangers caused by climate change has made renewable energy a focus, and has also caused many countries, including Uganda, to start talking about transition to renewable energy, low carbon economy, and also replacing fossil fuel with renewable energy. Agenda 2030, declared on 25th September 2015, the SDG with 17 goals gave a boost to renewable energy, if only issues to do with governance policies on renewable energy are implemented. Especially SDG 7 depend on quantity and quality of energy, and they are very key to the development of a country, but also quality of life, whether you talk about education, health, water, sanitation, security, industrialization, and productivity. Uganda has a substantial amount of renewable energy and evenly distributed in the country. And this includes wind with a speed of 2 to 6 minutes per second, hydropower capacity of 4,100 megawatts, but only installed about 1,000 megawatts. We also have solar, the average of which is about 5.1 kilowatt hours per meter square, and also geothermal, about 450 megawatts, but not well developed. Biogas, annual yields of about 50 million tons, and also peat, although some people don't treat peat as a renewable, but others consider so, about 800 megawatts, and this is equivalent to about 250 tons of oil equivalent. And we have also the biomass, which is majorly used, about 90%, and with firewood of about 78.6%, charcoal 5.6%, crop residues of 4.7%, and cogeneration, renewable through cogeneration of about 1,650 megawatts. Now, this is already a rich area for renewable energy in Uganda. But all this potential, if well developed, can generate about 7,200 megawatts of electricity. And if developed with policies and making access low, the cost to be low, but Uganda has the smallest per capita energy consumption in sub-Saharan Africa. Much as we are talking about the global consumption of 168,515 terawatts, but only Africa has 3%. That's according to the International Energy Agency 2010. Therefore, there are opportunities we can explore in Uganda to address renewable. First, Uganda adopted the roadmap with goals and work plans to scale up renewable energy. Also, Uganda believes in increased investment in renewable energy that would improve national grid supply, boost energy security, and advance sustainable development. Therefore, with all this support of the government, I call upon the international community to increase climate financing. We are also talking about giving us good price for carbon so that with our rich biodiversity, we shall be able to address the issue of renewable. But we are also talking about debt swap because we...
Yes, please finish.
Most of the damage caused by climate change was caused by outsiders. So we are saying, can we cause a debt swap? Because that will make us to have a level ground. The high rate of deforestation is because we don't have alternatives. Therefore, these are issues that we need to address. The high interest loans, we need trade instead of loans. The dim energy, we need energy, we invest in energy, and it must reach the people, and it must be strong, reliable, and for industrial use. And also we need to invest in research and development, reliable energy infrastructure, and address replacement for renewable energy. For example, subsidies for kerosene can be used for renewable energy. These are our position, and we think if we can work together, we shall be able to scale up renewable energy in Uganda. After all, we are rich in biodiversity, and we have high potential. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Biyika Songa. I think your call was very much heard with the need for international climate financing, new finance instruments, debt swaps, and supports to be able to invest further in renewable energy to use the untapped potential in Uganda. Now I would like to hand over to Honorable Samuel Onwigbo, former Member of Parliament from Nigeria and from the Climate Change Committee from Nigeria. Honorable Onwigbo, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon or good morning, everyone. I would like to just say a few points based on the guidance I was given. First is to say that what we are doing in Nigeria is going to be part of the whole approach that Africa intends to adopt in tackling the challenges coming from both climate change and the issue of renewable energy. For instance, in Nigeria, with a population of about 223 million people, we know that less than 40% of that has access to electricity as a whole. And we also know that we have abundant raw materials. We have sun, we have water, and we also have wind. But we've not been able to get to that point. Let me also point out that over the years, for nearly a little over 50 years now, issue of electricity remained in the exclusive list of the Constitution. But I'm happy to announce that the 9th National Assembly, which I served in alongside one of my colleagues there, Honorable Bolus, we were able to amend the Constitution to remove electricity from where it was handled only by the federal government. We have not been able to push it down to the concurrent list, even to the point where local governments can get involved in it. So it's a major amendment. Following that, the 9th Assembly was also able to pass a revolutionary Electricity Act 2023, which was assented to by our president, who recognized in his inaugural speech that electricity will become more accessible and affordable to businesses and homes alike. Power generation should nearly double, and transmission and distribution networks improved. We will encourage states to develop local sources as well, unquote. So in line with that, in a few weeks after that, the law passed by the National Assembly, 9th National Assembly, was assented to by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, GCFR, just few weeks, about 2 weeks after he assumed office. So we on a path to truly revolutionize the entire process. And I know that in one of the laws, it was made explicit in one of the sections that any law passed by the state, that is to tell you that it's been further strengthened, will not be either countered by the federal, because the states have not been given authority to be able to make laws on electricity and all that, including renewable energy. So when you look at this together, you would then find that we have taken the proper step towards meeting our electricity needs, taking into consideration the contributions from renewable energy. And that is very, very, very important. Let me also add that in the whole nation, the local governments we have is 774, and we have 36 states. So this law, in line with the Climate Change Act, which by the grace of God I sponsored, which we passed in 2021, and it was assented to. They are in line because in our Climate Change Act, we also provided for these subnationals to participate in national decision-making by the council that is chaired by Mr. President. So we have now seen that this law, Electricity Act, is also in tune, it's in line with the Climate Change Act. So we are now going to be able to take advantage of our population, available materials or raw materials, and also the fact that we have a huge market. I've seen the lights, taking a different position, so I should be moving faster than before. But let me say that Nigeria has over 60% youthful population and lack of electricity access to over 40% of its estimated population of 223 million, with abundant raw materials of adequate sun.
Again, of course, you have a minute to finish.
Thank you. Of adequate sun, wind, water, etc., is ready market for investors in renewable energy. Let me conclude by advising investors, and of course this includes Nigerians. And let me digress a bit and point out the fact that in our telecommunications privatization, it is driven by an African approach, because when we called on international telecommunications firms to participate in it, they were reluctant. But it was the local, let me call it African company, the MTN, that joined forces with us and now use that position to leapfrog. So I see that this is also going to happen with our renewable energy experience. I therefore use this opportunity to invite not only the international community, but our fellow African brothers to work on this and achieve it. Let me also thank this wonderful, great parliament for affording us this opportunity to share these ideas. Thank you, and God bless.
Thank you so much, Honorable Samuel Onukbu, for your insights on recent legislation in Nigeria. I would now like to hand over to Honorable Jacqueline Mongin, Member of Parliament from Uganda and Chair of APNC. So, Honorable Jacqueline, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you so much, our moderator and honorable members present here. Already my chair of the Committee of Climate Change of Uganda, Honorable Lawrence Nsonga, has effectively talked about Uganda, and mine would be to just add a voice on what Honorable Lawrence has talked about. I would like to also emphasize on the fact that Uganda is rich in renewable energy resources, including hydrogen power, biomass, solar energy, geothermal peat, and wind. And therefore, many renewable energy resources that can be used for energy production. Although I would state here that Uganda has not yet tapped its potential in regards to this direction. Uganda has also put in place policies that could be related to championing renewable energy in the country, including Uganda adopted in 2002 different policies that could be related, including the climate change policy of 2015 and all the other policies that have been addressed by the different, have been addressed differently in Uganda, including Uganda being part of the energy for all, and all the other instruments that have made Uganda to redirect its engagement in regards to promoting renewable energy. Of course, there are so many opportunities in Uganda. As you are aware, 26 million people are not yet served by power. And that gives Uganda a potential in terms of now promoting, instead of just powering Uganda, but powering going renewable as a country. It is among it's among the access deficit countries in Africa, and I think this gives Uganda a very good strategic ground in terms of promoting renewable energy. The Uganda Investment Authority in 2018, among the businesses published for attracting investors in the country, included viable projects within Uganda, including geothermal exploration, among others, and that definitely relates to renewable energy. I would like to borrow the example of Germany, and those are the countries that have done well in renewable energy, and I think Uganda is one of those countries that has the greatest actually potential. Like in my earlier speech when we were opening, I talked about the wind energy potential is very viable in Uganda. However, we still have challenges. The challenges that we have as a country, and that may not only be for Uganda, it could also be to other countries, is we are delving into using renewable energies like solar, among others, that have poor quality. So we need to build our own potential within Africa, within the country, to be able to assemble our own energy plants within the country so that we do not really rely on poor quality that is brought from the different parts of the world. It is also a potential for local entrepreneurship. So with those, a lot of things had already been talked to by Honorable Nsonga, but vocational training in this direction is very key, and emphasizing that entrepreneurs take this as a business would be a way forward in terms of championing renewable energy access for all Ugandans, but to me, I believe for all Africans that are not yet served with the renewable energy potential. I thank you.
Thank you very much. The light was not even red. Thank you for this and giving some more insights on legislation in Uganda. And I found it inspiring to see also see it as an opportunity for Uganda to promote renewables to combat energy access and the need to build an own renewable energy industry on the continent. Thank you very much. Now I would like to hand over to Honorable Zaha Al-Bassar, Member of Parliament from Egypt and Deputy Chair of the Foreign Affairs Committee. The floor is yours.
Thank you. For Egypt, Egypt gives a high priority for renewable energy opportunities due to the availability of the natural resources. For instance, Binban Solar Park in Aswan, it highlights the immense potential of solar power generating. Binban is one of the largest solar installations globally, consists of 41 solar power plants, with a total capacity of 1.65 gigawatts, providing electricity to more than 1.5 million households. Also, there is the Za'farana wind farm, which is along the Red Sea coast, illustrates our commitment to wind energy with over 600 megawatt of installed capacity. This project signifies the contribution and the importance of reducing the reliance on fossil fuel in Egypt. We also see the investment in projects for renewable energy as an opportunity for job creation. The construction and the ongoing maintenance of renewable energies, like, for example, the West Bakr wind farm, it employed hundreds of local workers, demonstrating the economic benefits of renewables. Moreover, in Egypt, we are actively attracting green finance. Egypt successfully secured financing for the Komombo solar plant, which provides around 200 megawatt facility located near Aswan. This kind of partnerships and this kind of work to attract green financing is also backed by government efforts and parliamentary efforts. From the government side, we had the feed-in tariff program to provide attractive incentives to renewable energy developers and private sector investments. And for parliaments, our parliament had a priority to have a policy framework for the renewable energies, and we have Egypt's renewable energy law, and with the establishment of the Egyptian Electricity Utility and Consumer Protection Regulatory Agency, we both played a vital role in providing a stable regulatory environment. And for the question of partnership regionally and internationally and how it helps us as parliamentarians, I can say that we find it very supportive in capacity building. We understand more and we learn more from our regional and international partners the regulations of electricity markets, promoting clean energy and improving the energy efficiency. Also, attending and participating in regional and international forums like, for example, IRENA, IPU, the Mediterranean Energy Regulators Forums, where we meet parliamentarians like you, honorables here. We share experiences, we share best practices. Such forums helps us learn more from each other and actually form a regional partnership and regulatory frameworks. In closing, Egypt is dedicated to go ahead with its renewable energy journey, and we welcome collaboration with international partners and harness the full potential of renewables, creating jobs, strengthen our infrastructure, and contribution to greener and sustainable future for everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Zaha Al-Bassar, for those insights on legislation also in Egypt regarding feed-in tariffs and an Egyptian renewable energy law, and for highlighting the need for international fora to exchange on capacity building, how to regulate markets, how to advance energy efficiency, and so on. Thank you very much. I would now like to announce our the final speaker of this panel now, Honorable Senator Wahome Wamatinga, Member of Parliament in Kenya. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, moderator. Thank you very much, session chair. Let me take this opportunity, first of all, to congratulate us all for, first of all, taking time to sit down here and have a candid discussion of what needs to be done. Kenya enjoys 86% of renewable energy from the matrix of hydro, geothermal, solar, and biomass. However, we have a penetration rate of about 77%. This could be very deceptive because we still have not generated enough to feed our industrial development as envisaged in the Vision 2030. However, from the amount of energy that's generated, we have only about 24% being not renewable, but these cost about 70% of the amount spent on energy. I would want to maybe digress a bit and look at the PPAs, which are the major providers of energy, and look at the financing models. And I want to borrow heavily from what the speaker said. We know that most of these PPAs are financed by money borrowed from the World Bank, from other institutions, international institutions. These are pension funds from developed countries. I would want to challenge ourselves as African legislators. It is time that we remodel our pension funds. It is time that we look at our financing models so that we do not use our investments to grow foreign pensions, but we should do that to grow African pensions. I want to take an example of this country. It takes a whole 13 years for you to get a license to produce power. This is very unattractive for any pension fund that would want to invest in that sector. And therefore, my challenge to all the legislators in this House, let us look at the laws governing some of these models so that we can use that opportunity to ensure that it is the African pensioners who benefit as opposed to the currently constituted PPAs where most of the monies are borrowed from pensions in the Western countries. My fellow legislators, we did indeed in Kenya pass a climate change amendment bill in a record 3 days in the Senate. I would want to believe we can do more for us Africans. I would also want to see us discussing more about technology exchange within African institutions, building the capacity so that we stop the over-reliance of this mentality that the Western must do it. Yes, true, the polluters must pay. But as we do that, we must also look at the practices that we can introduce in our countries so that so that the way we manage our power, the usage of power, it is done in an environmental sustainable manner. It is the responsibility of we as parliamentarians to educate, to conduct civic education, because there is a lot that we can do. We've learned in the last couple of decades, climate change has mostly affected African countries. It is the high time that now we look at laws that will govern us as a continent without having to over-rely on the Western dominance in moving this continent ahead. My fellow legislators, my challenge to us all, it is time that we came up with discussion about the cooperation within African nations, how we can do to develop regional power blocks within Africa, which we must not trade using dollars, which we can exchange, we can do better trade, so that the over-reliance on dollar does not kill our economy. This is a factor that we must look at. We must put legal measures in place. We must implement frameworks that will help us to harvest and to advance our own resources, using our own knowledge, developing our own knowledge base, and most importantly, knowing that we know where the problem is, and we are the ones who must come up with solutions. As parliamentarians, I would want to challenge ourselves. Let us start looking at this as the new dawn, where Africa must stand up for herself and say, indeed, the solution of the problems we have in climate change, we must be pioneers. As much as I would want to say, it is important that also the polluters must be brought on the floor so that we can offset the pollution that they cause with the carbon credits. And this must be put in a framework that will benefit the Africans and the people of Africa, but the champions must be the legislatures in African continent, because the change must begin with us, and we must be the champions of that change. Chair, I submit.
Thank you very much, Honorable Wahome Wamatinga, for this very strong call for further exchange, cooperation among African nations, and a truly African-led agenda. We are a bit behind time due to the session before, but our Honorable Chair gave us until 11:50 for a bit more of discussion now. So I would like to open the floor for, let's say, 3 questions, and I would like to limit those questions to 2 minutes so that we can hear really 3 more people and give the panel a chance to react briefly to that. So I would like now the audience to raise your hand if you have questions, and please excuse if I can only take 3 questions. The first one I saw was here with the white, no, here in the second row. Yes, you can please stand up and introduce yourself, and you have 2 minutes.
Thank you, moderator. Good morning, Honorable Senator and Member of Parliament. My name is Cyril Siwe. I'm the head of UNEP for Kenya. I am very flattered to be part of these conversations, and he has been extremely educating to listen to the Member of Parliament. Yes, you're fully right, Honorable, to say that capacity building is very important, that we have to train, and not only academic training, but practical training. So me, from where I stand at the United Nations Environment Program with other colleagues from what we call the United Nations country team in Kenya, one of the questions that could come that I would also like to invite for the deliberation is, at what cost? Let's take the example of renewable energy and green transition, since this conversation and part of this conference agenda is on green transition. The cost of electric car, which is something that will probably be debated in this August room, is it something that is sustainable for average Kenyans or East Africans? If you take the medium-sized car, which is currently being produced in Rwanda, the car goes for 70,000 USD. And if you take the average profession, which is a teacher or a medical doctor, how long it would need to put aside to be able to buy this car and be part of the energy transition? What I mean here, moderator, is how can this opportunity be also a platform to have that type of conversation and to agree as a continent and to agree as an actor, as those who set the framework, what type of enabling, what type of incentives can we put forward? This conversation, we understand the pro and the cons, and therefore we create enabling environment for industry and for private sector to be part of that conversation. Thank you. I stop here.
Thank you very much for highlighting the need for an enabling environment and making those technologies really affordable for people on the ground. I saw back there a gentleman having a further question. Yes, please introduce yourself. You also have 2 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Coordinator. My name is Dr. Emmanuel Otala, a Member of Parliament from Uganda and the Chairperson of the Committee on Environment and Natural Resources. I am not asking a question, but I want to, first of all, subscribe to the submission of my honorable colleagues from Uganda, the Honorable Lawrence Songa and the Honorable Jacqueline Amongi. But I want to raise a very fundamental issue that in Uganda, for the past 20 years, we have invested close to $20 billion in oil and gas development. And I'm happy that the conversation that we are having right now is in respect to a transition to clean energy sources. And I want to observe that the developed countries that contribute much of the carbon causing the rise in climate and overall climate changes, are still continuing to invest in fossil fuel development. For the past 20 years, the developed countries have made it difficult for Uganda to develop its oil and gas. And what I'm saying is that with our investment, and in view of the fact that a transition is going to take some little bit of time, I am raising a controversial issue that Uganda will continue to develop its oil and gas in view of that, unless the main polluters compensate us and tell us that yes, now with the investment that, I'm sorry, can I just finalize on that?
Yeah, just briefly conclude, please.
Thank you. If we can be given a reparation for our investments so far, because they are the ones who have made it difficult for us to get our oil out of the ground, I must say that we must strike a balance between transition and developing oil and gas. Thank you. I submit.
Thank you very much for your point on investments still going in oil and gas and this argument of needing, of striking this balance. I saw one gentleman over here. You have the floor for 2 minutes, and then we give the panel the possibility to react.
Thank you very much, Sessions Chair, and thank you very much, our Super Senator, Otieno Kajwang, for this opportunity to ask a very pertinent question. Now that we have those who pollute the environment and those who clean the environment, the West being the pollutants and the African being the lungs that clean the environment. And yesterday, our president talked about introduction of taxes, because when we depend on donation to be able to mitigate the issue of environmental pollution, then we may not go far. Where can we come in as legislative arms, either the Pan-African Parliament or East African Legislative Assembly, or even local assemblies, to be able to set laws that will enable those who pollute the environment to pay taxes for pollution, and then those taxes be used to compensate the lungs of the environment. Lastly, I want to ask another question on the issue of persons with disability and climate change. In Africa, we have approximately 100 million persons with disabilities. Crutches, wheelchairs, and other assistive devices are manufactured in factories. How can we be able to urge them, those factories, to use renewable energy? If I may just give an example, in Kenya we have 400,000 wheelchair users. Those are Kenyans sitting on a metallic worth 12 billion factory. So how can we come in to be able to use renewable energy in the manufacture of assisted devices for persons with disability? Let us not leave anybody behind. Also, persons with disability should be involved in this climate change summit. Thank you.
Thank you very much for raising those points on the need of new taxes, and also to leave no one behind, and see how also people with disabilities can be taken on board of this transition. I would now just give the panel the chance for very brief reaction, maybe 1 minute per person, and maybe you can focus on one of those issues raised in your intervention. And I would like to start with Honorable Onwikbu, since he's there in line, and then go one by one of the speakers.
Thank you very much indeed. I listened to what Dr. Otela said when he was talking about the cost, about $70,000 US to acquire a vehicle or so. All I would like to say is to encourage us as a people, as a continent, because we know the disadvantages we have faced over time. For instance, I mentioned the successful partnership or collaboration between a company from South Africa when nobody wanted to, deal with us when we were privatizing the telecommunications industry in Nigeria. It was an African company that came, and then it turned out to be a gold mine. So we can work together. The cost of telephone, 3310, they call it, was 30-something thousand, 52,000. But over time, with increased number of people purchasing, improved technology, the price just dropped. I have no doubt that that's where we're going to go as we are talking about renewable energy. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Honorable Ben.
Yes, very brief. The problem is when we are investing in photovoltaic, we have to spend at the beginning a lot of money, and in the operating time, it's cheaper. But how can we get this money at the beginning? That is a problem. So, for example, we are looking for, from the GIZ, for funds that you can replace diesel by photovoltaic, and then you have at the end a benefit of it. As I said, financing systems, we are talking about result-based financing systems, because on the one side you have the big investments, on-grid investments, that something like PPAs, and you have to make a good contract. But we are talking about decentralized solutions, and that's the problem of maintenance. And so we would like to strengthen local market, because the big investments, they are made from foreign companies and not from the local market. So that's why we are talking about grants, we are talking about private money, and we are talking about a business case for local companies. And that's the system of result-based financing.
Thank you very much.
Okay, I thank you so much, honorable members. I still insist that the solutions must come from ourselves if we have to champion this renewable energy. And we must be the ones to know what exactly is right and copying from what those other successful countries have done. Otherwise, it is still a gap that has to be covered, and we are the people that will cover that gap. And Honorable Sankok, my colleague, raised an issue in regards to the disability. Article 21 in our constitution in Uganda talks about right, each and everyone enjoying the rights. And all our legislations, disability is mainstreamed in all acts, all bills that are adopted by Parliament and assented to by the President of Uganda. And I think this is not any different. And of course, this is a call for all of us, whenever we are championing any cause, not to leave issues of disability. Inclusion is very necessary. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I just want to put this very clear that sustainable management of the environment or climate is not about don't touch. Touch it so long as the benefits are more than the cost. So we have to do a lot of cost-benefit analysis, because if we say people are using firewood and charcoal, don't touch, what will they use? There is no way someone who is using firewood will jump to start using electricity. So we have to do a lot of cost-benefit analysis in our decision. Then number two, there was a mention that 2% of the renewable energy fund from the global community is reaching Africa. Do you know why? Because we have an agency that is doing the credit rating based in South Africa and doing credit rating for the whole 54 countries of Africa. And so in Africa, the countries that are scoring high is only Mauritius, Botswana, and so other countries cannot get that credit from that loan from the private sector, who are told that we are still scoring below capacity. Otherwise, for us, we still recommend that we do the energy mix in Uganda, and we move towards net zero. And there is still time frame up till 2050 or 2030 that we can do that. So what is the problem with generating 100% tons of greenhouse gases and absorbing it all in the sink? Thank you.
Thank you. So the final speaker in this round would be Honorable Zahar Al-Bazar from Egypt.
Thank you, and I would like to thank this opportunity for exchanging and learning from each other as parliamentarians. I stress very hard on platforms where we can share best practices, best regulations, learn from each other, and have an inclusive policy framework, platforms and opportunities where we can help each other to learn. The other thing is I also would like to emphasize the role of young people in our local communities. And as young parliamentarian, I also call for other parliamentarians to empower young people to participate and raise their awareness about the importance of renewable energies and how it's beneficial for our economies and our communities. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we have come to the end of this session. So honorable members of parliament, distinguished guests, and ladies and gentlemen, it was an honor to moderate this session. I think we learned a lot about opportunities, legislation, obstacles of renewable energy there. We have just heard one call to emphasize the role of young people. I would like to take that and put it a bit further, and as part of global civil society, emphasize the role of civil society also. And it would be a pleasure to continue to work with you to strengthen also the bonds of parliamentarians and civil society in general. And with that, I am now closing the session and hand over to our Honorable Chair for further remarks on the continuation of this conference. Thank you very much. And maybe a big applause also to our panel. Sorry, I forgot about that.
One very burning question. One very burning question.
Where is it coming from?
Can I?
Senator, it must be very burning. Senator Kavindu, maybe a minute. Let it be a question, not a speech.
I'll try.
Please. And it is a very dangerous window. It's a very dangerous window that I'm opening.
Yeah, thank you. My question is, we Africans are put in a place where we are meant to be very poor. But I want to say, Africans, we are not poor, because the best diamonds come from here. God comes from here. Every good gemstone comes from here. And I'm talking of gemstones knowing what I'm talking about. Africa, if these gemstones and every wealth that we have in Africa is controlled, there is nothing we cannot do. What are we meant to do as parliamentarians to capture and to control our wealth so that we can be able to get the money, the finances that we need, because it is here in Africa, so that we can move forward with these climate and energy problems. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Honorable members, we still have 2 plenary sessions, and we have a tea break. And I want to just propose that we do just a 15-minute tea break. And clerk, I don't know whether we're allowed to ring the bell after the 15 minutes. And then when we come to the next session, that will be moderated by our friend from Konrad Adenauer, during the plenary we can take more questions. So, Mheshimiwa Simba, I've seen you've raised your hand. We can take that at the next session. And all those who were not able to, yes, Solomon from Nigeria, we can fill those questions in the next plenary session. So we take a 15-minute break Tea will be served as you walk out of the chamber. Is it on the left or on the right? It's on the right. We just make it quick, 15 minutes, and then we can come back and take the other questions that are still pending. Thank you.